Hi, I'm Arabella, a storyteller on YouTube. This story is inspired by real relationship confessions and has been fictionalized for storytelling purposes. Names, details, and events have been changed. If this story moves you, or if you see a part of yourself in it, please like the video and subscribe to support my channel. Now, let's begin. When I cheated, I called it a mistake. When my wife did the same thing, I called it cruelty. I remember holding her phone in my hand, staring at the proof, feeling like the only betrayed person in the room. And then she looked at me and said, "Now you know what you taught me." That was the moment I realized I was not just angry because she hurt me. I was angry because for the first time my own reflection had learned how to bleed. Before she hurt me, I had already broken her. I need to say that first because if I start with what she did, I sound cleaner than I was. 3 years before I found those messages on her phone, she found mine. Not all of them, just enough. Enough to know I had lied. Enough to know another woman had heard parts of me that should have belonged to my wife. Enough to make her sit on the edge of our bed with my phone in her hand, looking like the room had changed shape around her. I remember crying. I remember saying all the words people say when they want mercy more than accountability. I was lost. I was weak. It meant nothing. I never stopped loving you. And the worst part is, some of those things were true. But truth can still be selfish when you only offer it after you have been caught. She stayed. Not right away. Not easily. But she stayed. She still cooked dinner sometimes. She still slept beside me. She still came to family birthdays and smiled in photos, though her smile never reached the same place again. I told myself we were healing, but healing was not the same as returning. She had stayed in the marriage, but something in her had stepped back from me. I wanted her to forgive me, but I did not want her to remember for too long. That is the part that makes me ashamed now, because in the beginning I said all the right things. Take all the time you need. Ask me anything. I'll do whatever it takes. I meant them when I said them. Or at least, I meant the version of them that ended with her eventually looking at me the way she used to. But real pain does not follow the schedule of the person who caused it. A month later, she was still asking questions. 3 months later, she still flinched when my phone buzzed. 6 months later, if I came home late, I could see her trying not to imagine things. At first, I answered gently. Then I started getting tired. That was cruel. She would ask, "Who texted you?" And I would sigh before I answered. She would ask why I deleted an email, and I would say, "Are we still doing this?" As if her pain had become a habit. As if my betrayal had turned into her flaw. I wanted credit for being sorry. I wanted my guilt to count as payment. I wanted her to understand that I was suffering too without realizing that my suffering came from having to face what I did, while hers came from having it done to her. There is a difference, and I blurred it every chance I got. I told myself she was punishing me. I told myself she needed to move on. I told myself there was no point staying together if she was going to keep bringing up the past. But it was not the past for her. It was the bed she still had to sleep in, the kitchen where I had lied, the phone that could still light up and make her stomach drop. I wanted forgiveness to mean she stopped bleeding where I could see it. But she was not taking too long to heal. I was taking too long to understand the wound. I thought she stayed because she still needed me. That was another thing I got wrong. After a while, she stopped asking as many questions. She stopped checking my phone. She stopped waiting up when I came home late. At first, I felt relieved. I told myself this was progress. I told myself trust was coming back. I told myself she had finally decided to stop punishing both of us and move forward. But that was not trust. That was distance. She started doing small things without me. Things so ordinary I almost missed them. She opened a separate savings account, and when I asked about it, she said it was easier for budgeting. She took her car to the mechanic without mentioning the warning light first. She went to a doctor's appointment alone, even though she used to ask me to drive when she was nervous. She stopped telling me every detail of her day. She stopped asking my opinion before making plans. She stopped leaning on me for things she used to pretend she could not do alone, and I should have admired her for that. Instead, I felt uneasy, because the less she needed from me, the less space I had to prove I had changed. I had spent so long wanting her to stop hurting out loud that I did not recognize what it meant when she finally went quiet. She was not healed, she was rebuilding, not the marriage, herself. And she was doing it in places I could not reach. One night, I watched her laugh at something on her phone. Not a polite laugh, a real one. The kind I had not heard in months. I asked, "What's funny?" She looked up, still smiling a little, and said nothing. Then she turned the screen off. I remember feeling offended, which is almost funny now. After everything I had hidden, I was hurt by one closed door. But that was the first time I realized she had rooms inside her life that no longer had my name on them. I thought she had stayed because she could not imagine leaving. Really, she was staying long enough to learn that she could. Then I found the proof. And for a few minutes, I forgot I had ever been the reason she learned how to hide things. It was her tablet. She had left it charging on the kitchen counter while she was in the shower. I was not looking for anything. At least, that is what I told myself at first. But the screen lit up. A message appeared. Just a name I did not know and one sentence that made my chest go cold. I read it once, then again. Then I picked up the tablet with hands that were suddenly not steady. There were no details on the lock screen. Just enough. Enough to make my mind create the rest. I stood there in our kitchen, the same kitchen where she had once stood holding my phone, and I felt something ugly rise in me. Anger, humiliation, disbelief. As if the universe had made a special exception to hurt me. When she came downstairs, I was still holding the tablet. She stopped at the doorway. She knew. I said, "Who is he?" My voice did not sound like mine. She looked at the screen, then at me. For a second I expected panic. Tears. The kind of begging I had done when it was me. But she only looked tired. That made me angrier. I called her cruel. I called her selfish. I asked how she could do this to me. To me. I said those words like they did not belong in my mouth. I forgot every excuse I had once begged her to understand. Lost, confused, weak. It meant nothing. I forgot how badly I had wanted my betrayal to be seen as a mistake, not a definition of who I was. Because now that I was the one holding the proof, I wanted her mistake to define everything. I wanted to be the victim without history. But history was standing right there in the room with us. I asked her how she could do that to me. She looked at me for a long time. Not cold, exactly, just tired in a way I recognized too late. Then she said, "Do you really want me to answer that?" I hated the question, because it did not give me anything to fight. I wanted her to cry. I wanted her to apologize. I wanted her to explain herself badly enough that I could stand above the mess and call it justice. I wanted to be the wounded one without having to remember the wound I had made first. But she did not give me that. She sat down at the kitchen table, the same table where I had once begged her not to leave me, and folded her hands like she was trying to keep them from shaking. "I didn't wake up one day like this," she said. I said, "So now this is my fault." She closed her eyes. "No. What I did is mine. But you asked how I could do it." I had no answer to that. She looked at the tablet in my hand. "You taught me how to sleep beside someone who could lie to my face." That landed harder than anything she could have shouted. She kept going quieter now. "You taught me how to smile at dinner while wondering if the person across from me was still choosing me. You taught me how to hear 'I love you' and not know if it meant anything. You taught me how to survive not being enough." I wanted to interrupt her. I wanted to say it was different. I wanted to say I had been broken, lost, stupid, sorry. But every word I reached for was a word she had already heard from me once. So I just stood there, holding the proof, looking at the woman I had begged to forgive me now, speaking in the language I had forced her to learn. She did not say I deserved it. She did not say it was revenge. That would have been easier. She only said I became someone I don't recognize after you broke me. And I hate that too. For the first time, my anger had nowhere clean to stand. I called her cruel. I called her selfish. I said she had destroyed whatever was left of us, and the whole time I could hear myself. That was the worst part. I could hear the same tone I had once begged her not to use with me. I could hear the certainty in my voice. The way I wanted her to be completely wrong so I could be completely hurt. I said, "This is different." She looked up at me. How one word. And I hated that I did not have an answer ready. I said because I regretted it. She did not laugh. She did not even look surprised. She just said, "So did I." That made me furious. Not because it was impossible, because it took away the special place I had built for my own guilt. I wanted my regret to make me human. I wanted hers to be an excuse. I said, "I never stopped loving you." She said, "Neither did I." And suddenly, every sentence I had used to defend myself years ago came back wearing her voice. It meant nothing. I was lost. I was lonely. I hated myself afterward. I never meant to hurt you. When I said those things, I wanted mercy. When she could have said them, I wanted punishment. That is when I understood what kind of man I had been. Not just a man who cheated, a man who wanted two different moral laws. One for my weakness, one for her betrayal. I wanted my pain to be evidence. I wanted hers to be history. I wanted her to carry what I had done, heal from it. Stay kind, stay loyal, stay available for my redemption. But when she broke in a way I could recognize, I called it unforgivable. I looked at her across the table, and for 1 second I saw us both clearly. Not equal, not innocent, not justified. Just two people standing in the wreckage of something I had cracked first. And I realized the most unbearable part was not that she had become like me, it was that I still wanted to believe I had been better. The other man was not what scared me most. At first, I thought he was. I wanted to know his name, his age, where he worked, how long she had known him, what he gave her that I no longer could, whether he made her laugh, whether she looked at him the way she used to look at me. I hated him before I even knew him. That felt easier. If I made him the enemy, I would not have to look too closely at the woman standing in front of me. But the more I asked, the less she gave me. Not because she was hiding everything, because she no longer needed me to understand everything. That was what scared me. She did not beg. She did not promise it meant nothing. She did not offer me her phone, her passwords, her schedule, her entire life as proof that she could still be managed. I had done all of that when she caught me. I had handed over pieces of privacy like payment, hoping if I gave her enough access, she would give me back the husband I had been before I ruined us. But she did not do that. She sat across from me with a strange kind of calm, and I realized she had already built parts of herself I had never seen. A bank account I did not know about. A friend I had never met. Plans she had made without asking what I thought. A life that had started forming in the empty space I left when I made her feel alone. I used to think my affair taught her how painful betrayal was, but it taught her something else too. How to stop falling apart when I disappointed her. How to answer her own questions. How to sleep beside grief and still wake up. How to become someone whose survival did not depend on my honesty anymore. That was the real threat. Not him. Her. The version of my wife who no longer looked terrified of losing me, because I had already made her live through that once, and she had survived. I had taught her how to endure me. I just never imagined she would learn how to live without me too. After that night, nothing exploded. That almost made it worse. There was no dramatic fight that ended with broken dishes or neighbors calling to ask if everything was okay. There was only the slow, quiet work of taking a marriage apart. She moved into the guest room first, not with anger, with a pillow, two folded blankets, and the small lamp from her side of the bed. I stood in the hallway watching her carry it, and I wanted to say, "That's my lamp too," which is ridiculous. Because what I really meant was, that was our room. You can't just leave me in it alone. But she could. And she did. The next morning, she canceled our counseling appointment. I found out from the calendar notification. Canceled by organizer. 3 words. No explanation. Then she separated the accounts. Not all at once, not loudly. Just enough to make the future possible without asking for my permission. A new checking account, a new password, a folder on the kitchen table with copies of documents I had not even realized she had gathered. Mortgage papers, insurance, tax returns. The kind of boring things that become weapons when love stops being the language people use. I said, "So that's it." She looked at me and said, "I don't know what it is yet, but I know I'm done waiting for you to decide." That sentence stayed with me, because I had spent years believing our marriage still revolved around whether I changed, whether I apologized enough, whether I earned my way back. But she was no longer standing still for my redemption. She packed a suitcase that weekend, not to disappear, not to punish me, just to stay with her sister for a while and breathe somewhere my guilt was not sitting across from her at breakfast. She left a note on the counter. No poetry, no anger, just a list. Bills due Friday, dog food in the pantry, lawyer meeting Tuesday, and at the bottom one sentence. Please do not make me responsible for your feelings anymore. That was when I understood. I had thought I was the center of her wound, but she had started building a life where I was no longer the center of anything. I taught her the cruelest lesson I could have taught someone who loved me. That love is not always enough reason to stay. When I cheated, I wanted her to believe the opposite. I wanted her to believe our history mattered more than my betrayal. I wanted her to believe the years we had built could outweigh the choice I made to break them. I wanted her to believe that because I still loved her, she should keep trying. And she did. For a while. She stayed in a marriage where trust had become work. She slept beside a man who had made her question her own instincts. She learned how to hear my apologies, how to look at my phone without shaking, how to sit through normal dinners with abnormal pain under the table. I watched her do that. I called it healing because calling it survival would have made me look worse, but now I understand. She was not becoming the woman I had married again. She was becoming someone who knew she could live after me. And maybe when she betrayed me, that did not make her innocent. It did not erase what she did. It did not turn her pain into permission. But it did make me understand something I had refused to understand when I was the one asking for mercy. The person who gets broken does not always come back softer. Sometimes they come back guarded, sometimes colder, sometimes capable of doing the very thing that once destroyed them because a part of them stopped believing loyalty would protect them. I wanted my betrayal to be treated like a wound we could survive, but I never asked what surviving it would turn her into. That is the part I carry now. Not that she hurt me back, not even that I deserved to feel some of what she felt, but that I taught her how to imagine a life where loving me and leaving me could both be true. I did not just make her doubt me, I made her doubt the idea that love should cost her that much. And once she learned that I could not unteach it. So what does that make me? A victim, a hypocrite? Or just the last person in the room to understand the lesson I had taught first? I will not pretend her betrayal did not hurt. It did. It hurt in places I did not know could still belong to her. But my pain did not erase what I had done. It did not turn my first betrayal into something smaller. It did not make me innocent just because I finally knew what it felt like to be on the other side of the lie. Maybe betrayal cannot be repaired by becoming the thing that broke you. Maybe all it does is leave two people standing in the same fire, both pointing at the match in the other person's hand. So I will leave you with this. When someone who once cheated gets cheated on, do they have the right to hurt like a victim? Or are they just finally feeling the weight of the wound they taught someone else to carry? Thank you for listening to this story with me. If it touched you, please don't forget to like this video and follow the channel for more stories like this. And most importantly, leave a comment below with your thoughts, how this story made you feel, and what you would have done in their place.